you. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopijana Balla Jaya Giribara Dhari Jaya Giribara Dhari. Jaya Gopijana Ballabha Jaya Giribara Dhari Jaya Giribara Dhari. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Banachari Yamunatira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Gurudev. Jai O Vishnupad Paramahansa's Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai O Vishnupad Paramahansa's Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anant Koti Vaishnavind Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय. श्री श्री राधा गोलोक नंद की जय. श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपी गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरी गोवर्धन की जय. श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय. श्री मथुरा धाम की जय. श्री नवद्वीप धाम की जय. श्री गंगामई की जय. श्री जमुनामयी की जय. श्रीमती तुलसी देवी की जय. श्रीमती भक्ति देवी की जय. गौनिताई की जय. श्री श्री राधा गोलोकनंद की जय. संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय. बृहद मृदंगा की जय. सामवेद भक्तविंद की जय. गौर प्रेमानंदी हरि हरि बोल. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prabhupada Bhutta Jyoti Kapala Prabhupada Sasaitam Pradesveta Sabachana Prasada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Bhutta Jyoti. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. We're continuing our studies of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 45, verse 4. Nalabdo deva hatayo vasuna bhavadantike yambala pitrage hasta vindante lalite lalitamutam. Nalabdo deva hatayor vasuna bhavadantike yambala pitrage hasta vidante lalite lalitamudam. Nalabdo deva hatayor vasona bhavadantike yambala pitrage hasta vindante lalitamudam. Anybody else? Thank you. Word for word meaning? Na, not. Labda, obtained. Deva, by fate. Hatayo, who have been deprived. Vasa, residence. Now, by us. Bhavat antike, in your presence. Yam, which. Bala, children. Pitra, of their parents. Geha, in the home. Stha, staying. Vidante, experience. Lalita, pampered. Mudam, happiness. Translation and purport by disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Deprived by fate, we could not live with you and enjoy the pampered happiness most children enjoy in their parents' home. Please repeat. Deprived by fate, we could not live with you and enjoy the pampered happiness most children enjoy in their parents' home. Purport. Here, Lord Krishna points out that not only did his parents suffer in separation from him and Balram, but the two boys also suffered in separation from their parents. I'm going to read verse 5 as well, and we'll include both of them for the discussion today. Sarvartha sambhavo deho janita. I'm just going to read this one. Janita posito yata natayor yati nirvesham pitror martya shata usa. Translation and purport. With one's body, one can acquire all goals of life, and it is one's parents who give the body birth and sustenance. Therefore, no mortal man can repay his debt to his parents, even if he serves them for a full lifetime of 100 years. Purport. Having stated both you are parents and we have suffered because of our separation, Krishna now states that his and Balram's religious principles have been spoiled by their failure to satisfy their parents. Om Jnana Trimandasya Glananjana Shalakya Chakshuranvitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapinam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Tvam Sutantimam Mancha Kalpatarupascha Kripa Sindhu Bhavevacha Patitanam Pavnebhayo Vaishnavevayo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine. Namo Shivaya Krishna Bhuta Shukta Gopal Krishna Swami. This is Aita Prakasa Vitras. So again, deprived by fate, we could not live with you and enjoy the pampered happiness most children enjoy in their parents' homes. With one's body, one can acquire all goals of life, and it is one's parents who give the body birth and sustenance. Therefore, no mortal man can repay his debt to his parents, even if he serves them for a full lifetime of 100 years. So, the purports of the acharyas, the tikas of the acharyas, are not very long, but I will um, go through them and pick out some points. Um, I got a little confused, and I'm not sure you won't, because the tikas have got three different explanations of each of these, and there's some controversial, some contradictory statements, but that's how a lot of times the tikas work, and there are so many meanings to each of these Sanskrit words. And there's, so I'm just going to read. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, we also have been fortunate, Deva Hatayo. Sorry, we also have been unfortunate, Deva Hatayo. However, the words also mean the opposite. We have attained good fortune in not attaining the happiness of ordinary children. Then Jiva Goswami says, not only was your happiness destroyed, but ours also. We were excluded from happiness as sons, or we did not have the opportunity to give you happiness, being useless sons. Thus, all our happiness was destroyed. They then speak this verse. We, dependent on bad karma, did not live with you. Children living in their parents' house, cared for by their parents, experience happiness. Or children living in their parents' house naturally experience happiness and are particularly cared for them. And Sanatana Goswami says that we should not have deprived you of happiness, but we were deprived of happiness. By ill fate, we could not live with you. He says this with great humility. However, his words can also mean not affected by fate. Advai adaiva hatayo. We could not live with you. The Lord is not dependent on karma. Children live in their parents' house, cared for by their parents, or even not cared for. Lalita, experience happiness. And then for the next verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, one cannot repay the debt to the parents who give birth to the body from which arises all aspirations, such as dharma. Jiva Goswami says the body is born and nourished by parents. This is a different reason for offering respects to parents. However, Krishna and Balram were not nourished by Vasudeva and Devaki. This verse cannot apply to them. And then Sanatana Goswami says, the body is usually nourished by parents. However, Krishna was nourished by Nanda and Yashoda. The body is subject to death, mritya, and lives only 100 years. So, in these verses, Krishna and Balram are almost empathizing with their parents and apologizing for their being absent from their parents' lives. It's even though in reality these two brothers had wonderful, loving childhoods in Vrindavan under the care of their parents, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Maya. But they're seeing the suffering of Devaki and Yashoda, Devaki and Vasudeva. And so they are showing lamentation, regret that they could not have been with Devaki and Vasudeva and enjoy their pastimes with their parents as an ordinary child might do. Or as the Goswami said, not necessarily as an ordinary child does. In this material world, we see what an ordinary child does. And that's not how these two were brought up, and that's not how we want to be bringing up our children. An ordinary child's life is just full of material sense gratification. Um, in the generation before us, the children were brought up differently, then we were brought up differently, then our children were brought up differently. And now the children are brought up by the screens. We had some screen times, we had some screens, but they were not overtaken. I mean, our children had screens, but they were not overtaken by screens, because in those days there was only the television. There wasn't the iPhone, the iPad, and all of the social media and all that. So that's not how we want to be bringing up children. And then they talk about the biggest reason for the children to be grateful to their parents and regret the fact that these two brothers have not been able to serve their parents. And it's the kind of debt that children cannot repay even in 100 years. And the biggest debt that the parents give children is the fact that they give them this material body and sustenance for this material body, so that the children can understand the goal of life and attain the goal of life. Now, normally the parents show their children the goal of life as being good at their studies, topping their classes, at least the Indian parents for sure, and go through and become doctors, engineers, IT professionals, computer engineers, and highly qualified, materially qualified beings, and be successful in this material world by earning lots and lots, having a big car, a big house, fancy car, marry well, have children, and then repeat the cycle all over again. And that is considered the success. Until we had the mercy of Prabhupada, we had exactly the same goals and aspirations. In fact, most of us came to the West to get all of those material success and material goals. Instead, we got the mercy of a pure devotee of the Lord and understood what that goal is. And so we know, we've read a lot and we've heard a lot about the pastimes of Krishna's childhood, Krishna and Balaram's childhood in Vraja. But I thought I'll read some passages that Prabhupada talks about the parents' love that Krishna and Balaram got during their childhood, that they didn't get from Devaki and Vasudeva. And of course, Devaki and Vasudeva have a lot of regret about that. And Krishna is empathizing and talking about it. So in Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada said, in Lalita Madhava, compiled by Rupa Goswami, Krishna is addressed as follows. My dear Krishna, when you are engaged in herding the animals, the dust caused by the hooves of the calves and cows covers your nice face and artistic tilak, and you appear very dusty. But when you return home, the milk flowing out of the breasts of your mother washes your face of its dust covering, and it appears that you are purified by this milk. It is just like when the deity is washed during the performance of the Abhishek ceremony. It is the custom in the temples of the deities that if there has been some impure activities, the deity has to be washed with milk. Krishna is the supreme personality Godhead, and he was washed by the milk from the breast of Mother Yasoda, which purified him from the dust covering. So we can just imagine the love that he got. In another place at Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says, the parental love of Mother Yashoda for Krishna steadily increased, and her love and ecstasy are sometimes described as intense affection and sometimes as overwhelming attachment. An example of attachment for Krishna with overwhelming affection is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 6th chapter, 27th verse, where Sukdev Goswami addresses Maharaj Parikshit in this way. My dear king, when magnanimous Nanda Maharaj returned from a tour, he began to smell the head of his son, and he was merged in an ecstasy of parental love. A similar statement is there in connection with Mother Yashoda when she was too anxious to hear the sound of Krishna's flute, expecting him back from the pasturing ground. So the love of Mother Yashoda and Nan Baba is very intense and nourished the brothers accordingly. In the 10th canto, 10:1 to 10:13, Prabhupada said, pure devotees are all in love with Supreme Personality of Godhead as Shyamasundar, not as Lord Vishnu Narayan, who is worshipped in Vaikuntha, where the devotees admire his opulence. Although Devaki is not on the Vrindavan platform, she is near the Vrindavan platform. On the Vrindavan platform, the mother of Krishna is Mother Yashoda, and on the Mathura and Dwarka platform, the mother of Krishna is Devaki. In Mathura and Dwarka, the love for the Lord is mixed with appreciation of his opulence. But in Vrindavan, the opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not exhibited. Now, and this is because of the kind of pastimes that have to take place in Vrindavan, Gokul, versus the pastimes that take place as older Krishna Balaram in Mathura and Dwarka. They are going into an opulent situation. They are suddenly princes and kings, while in Mathura, in Vrindavan, they were just cowherd boys. So the mood was different. And accordingly, the love was different. In Vrindavan, there was no awe and reverence. Even when the Vrindavanvasis saw all of this opulences of the Lord in terms of his strength, his beauty, and everything, they still considered him just as maybe an extraordinary boy or extraordinary boys. But in Mathura and Dwarka, they are princes, they are kings. And accordingly, even though the mood of Devaki Mata is not considered much different from Vrindavan, but it is mixed with awe and reverence. So with that kind of a feeling, the two brothers tell their parents, Devki and Vasudev, that there is no way that they can repay them. And the next few verses will talk about what that means or what. So, but this verse 5 talks about the reason we have to be grateful to our parents. And that is because they give us birth and they bring us up. They give us sustenance and make us such that we can understand the goal of life. And depending on the sukriti we may get, the blessing or the mercy we may get, we may think the goal of life is to achieve all material opulences, or we may be fortunate enough to understand that the goal of life is that we are not this body, that we are the spirit soul. So our purpose is not to gratify this body, but to understand our relationship. We are part and parcel of the supreme absolute truth, which is Shri Krishna. And the goal of living for love. And we are always trying to search for the so-called love in this material world. A world which is full of greed, envy, lust, anger, false ego, illusion, all of these things. It's full of sorrow and misery because we're always running after something that is elusive. You know, those who have $100 in the bank want 1,000. The ones who have 1,000 want 100,000. Those who have 100,000 want 1,000,000. Those who have 1,000,000, they want 10 million. And the 10 million want 100 million. And then there is all of these who've got hundreds of billions and they're still not satisfied. You know, we see around us the man who owns Tesla, always for more. I get amazed at the numbers that are quoted in India. They're not talking of 10 crores, 100 crores, 1,000 crores. They're talking about thousands of or hundreds of thousands of crores. That's unreal. And they're still not satisfied. But we are so fortunate because Prabhupada has shown us, he's told us, and we see that real happiness can only be found when we reawaken our love, the dormant love in our hearts for Krishna, or through Krishna consciousness. And how do we achieve Krishna consciousness? We know it is by devotional service, always thinking of Krishna by chanting his holy name, serving him, serving his devotees, and by spreading his glories of the holy name. And everyone sitting here listening to this class is doing devotional service, so listening to the pastimes of Krishna, the glories of Krishna. And everyone is doing their devotional service in various ways. Some by dressing the deities, some by making garlands and dressing the deities and cooking and going out on Sankirtan week after week, whether anybody shows up or not. So all of these are devotional service that are performed by devotees in order to achieve the goal, which is to develop and experience the transcendental love of Krishna and get prema bhakti, which is loving devotional service, which is the goal of life, a life of eternal bliss and knowledge. Prabhupada said that according to the Vedic principle, there are 3 stages of spiritual advancement, namely, we heard him yesterday, namely Sambandha, Jnana, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Sambandha Jnana refers to establishing one's original relationship with Supreme Personality of Godhead. Abhideya refers to acting according to that constitutional relationship. And Prayojana is the ultimate goal of life, which is to develop love of Godhead. Prema pu artamaha. So if we adhere to the regulative principles under the orders of the spiritual master, under our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, we can easily achieve the ultimate goal of life. A person who is constantly chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra very easily gets the opportunity to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we've all experienced it, right from the first time we go to or get in contact with the Prabhupada's movements, with the Hare Krishna movement, with International Society for Krishna Consciousness, on to us now, some a year ago, some 2 years ago, some 5 years ago, some of us 40 years ago, some of us 50 years ago. So obviously we get huge amount of happiness. That's the reason we stick with it. In the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada says, after hearing all these speeches of the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhattacharya was struck with wonder and awe and regarded him in dead silence. The Lord then encouraged him with assurance that there was no cause of wonder. I say that devotional service unto the Personality of Godhead is the highest goal of human life. He then quoted a shloka from Bhagavatam and assured him that even the liberated souls who are absorbed in the spirit and spiritual realization also take to the devotional service of the Lord Hari, because the Personality of Godhead has such transcendental qualities that he attracts the heart of the liberated souls too. The liberated souls are those who realize that we are this spirit, but they don't realize that Krishna is, we are the spirit soul. We are the spirit, we are part of the spirit soul. They don't realize who the spirit soul is or who the personal Krishna is. And even they eventually get attracted to Krishna in his personal form and realize him. In another place, and in the purport to 3rd Canto, 4th chapter, 25th verse, Prabhupada says, the servants of the Lord are actually the servants of society. They have no interest in human society other than to enlighten it in transcendental knowledge. They are interested in imparting knowledge of the relationship of the living being with the Supreme Lord, the activities in that transcendental relationship, and the ultimate goal of life. That is the real knowledge which can help society achieve the real aim of human welfare. Prabhupada didn't write anything in his books that he did not himself practice. All those volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, all the teachings, everything. He says in his purport to 7 to 14, whatever do and whatever our occupation, our main purpose should be to please the Supreme. From a lecture by Srila Prabhupada on Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 766 to 76, San Francisco, February 6, 1967. Just like when you want to stress upon some point, you say thrice, do this, do this, do this. He's talking about Kalo Naste, Naste, Naste. So, similarly, in the Brihad Naradiya Purana, thrice it has been emphasized that you must take to this Hare Nama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Why I must take it? Now, because there's no other alternative than this for your self-realization. If you at all want to know yourself, if you at all want to become perfect, or if you want at all to reach the goal of human life, then you must. So my Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada Singh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, so he says, my Guru Maharaj, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, my Guru Maharaj, the spiritual master, asked me to keep this verse. He said, keep this verse. This is Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj talking to Prabhupada. He said, keep this verse within your throat and you go on chanting, and I bless you that you will be liberated. You will.
Sumati Nandana Brajo Barunagara Okularam Jana Kana Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara Kalia Damona Vidana Amala Harinam Amiya Vilasa Amala Harinam Amiya Vilasa Vipina Purandara Navina Nagarabura Pansivadana Suvasa Vipina Purandara Navina Nagarabura Vansivadana Suvasa Vipina Purandara Navina Nagarabura Vansivadana Suvasa Brajajana Palana Surakulana Sana Brajajana Palana Surakulana Sana Brajajana Palana Surakulana Sana Brajajana Nanda Godanara Koala Nanda Godanara Koala Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara Sundarananda Gopala Sundarananda Gopala Jamuna Tattachara Gopi Vasanahara Rasarasika Kripa Moya Jamuna Tattachara Gopi Vasanahara Rasarasika Kripa Moya Haribo Sri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Nattabara Haribo Sri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Nattabara Bhagati Vino Dasraya Samadhi Nandana Rajabaro Nagara Gokularam Jana Kana Amala Harinam Amiya Vilasa Haribo Amala Harinam Amiya Vilasa Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara Sri Radhavalabha Vrindavana Natabara Hello Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Hare Ramo 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 Hare Hare Hello Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Om. Jai Radha Goloka Nanda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Om. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Om. Jayo Radha Golokananda, Radha Golokananda, Radhe. Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya, Giri Govardhan Jaya, Giri Govardhan Jaya Sri Vrindavadam. Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Sila Prabhupada. Haribo. Gaura Premanandi. Lord Krishna is beloved son of Yasoda, transcendental lover in the land of Braja, the delight of Gokula, known by the nickname Kana, the wealth of the lives of the gopis. the attractor of Cupid, and punisher of the serpent Kalia. These pure holy names of Lord Hari are full of sweet nectarian pastimes. Lord of the 12 forests of Braja, ever youthful, be best of lovers, player of the flute, and excellent dresser, protector of the inhabitants of Braja, destroyer of demonic dynasties, keeper and tender of Nanda's cows, giver of